dear students, welcome for the lecture series on tourism. In our last sessions, we discussed about the environmental impacts of tourism. In today's episode, we are concentrating on the social and cultural impacts of tourism. Society and culture refers to our way of life, how we survive, how we relate to others, our customs and our character. So the question is how this could be related to tourism. Society and culture greatly influence how we behave, what we feel comfortable with, how we like to be treated, how we treat others, and what we respect and value. Societies and cultures are all different, and this makes travel stimulating, the opportunity to see how other people live their lives and relate to their environment. Often, a community will embrace tourism without realizing the impact it can place on the community's culture and society. The social and cultural impacts of tourism can result in changes to patterns of behavior, lifestyle, and the quality of life of the local people. Tourism, like all business ventures, can have an impact on communities and may be positive or negative and sometimes both. The areas tourism can significantly affect a community and its inhabitants include quality of life, employment and business opportunities, facilities and amenities, infrastructure development like hotels and resorts, and population growth. In this episode, we are going to study the topic under the following captions. They are sources of socio-cultural impacts, demonstration effects, different phases of impacts, impacts on morals and good behavior, and socio-cultural benefits of travel and tourism. Let us start with the sources of socio-cultural impacts. Socio-cultural impacts are the third principal consequence along with economic and environmental impacts of tourism. As D. Credit E. and Cooper C. et al. Both observe, there are three sources of socio-cultural impacts at such places. These are tourists, hosts, and their interactions, that is, tourist and host interaction. A basic factor in this relationship is that hosts gain economically from their contact with visitors, but they or their community may experience some unexpected socio-cultural consequences. In this, we have three main components. Let us discuss one by one. Varied tourist reactions. Tourists can have a variety of reactions to their travel experience. Some visitors will be very aware that they are away from home and as a result feel released from their normal inhibitions against some forms of antisocial personal behavior. Other tourists may experience cultural shock. This is the emotional reaction of travelers when they go to places, usually foreign countries, but also those parts of their own country where the customs and lifestyles are very different from their own home area, which are obviously different from what they are used to. This can lead to tensions, emotional withdrawal, and sometimes actual positive dislike by visitors of some of the places they visit. At the same time, other visitors, especially those who are very experienced travelers, may feel quite at home in their new surroundings. This is especially so if there are few language, cultural or currency differences, or if these particular tourists have visited the place before and for long enough to feel at ease there. Next is the purpose of the visit. The degree of impact may be affected by the traveler's reason for visiting. For example, a business visitor will have a very different effect on the place he or she visits than a leisure tourist. These differences in levels of impact occur because most of the time the business person spends on his or her trip is likely to be restricted to the commercial sector. In contrast, many package tourists may spend much of their holiday within the protective environment that the hotel or resort provides. The nature of mass tourist relationships. There are three main features to tourist behavior during their contacts with host community, especially when they are in large numbers. Their contacts are predominantly brief and spontaneous, asymmetrical, and often occur during a short but high density tourist season. The majority of these host or visitor contacts is commercial and have nil or very little prior planning. In addition, they are characterized by the asymmetrical material or economic differences that frequently exist between visitors and hosts. Tourists are often perceived to be both wealthy and coming from different backgrounds to their hosts. Consequently, the host may be tempted to overcharge. Next, we shall move on to demonstration effects. These are the effects of those situations where someone sees another person doing a particular thing and as a result want to do or have the same things themselves. In addition, the tourist belongings such as cameras, holiday clothes, credit cards and foreign money may also create a demonstration effect. This occurs when the local host population, especially its younger members, want to imitate the tourist prosperity. As Matheson A. and Walt G. observe, young members of the host cultures are particularly susceptible to such demonstration effects. This may involve copying the visitors' consumption patterns, leading to increased demands for imported goods. Alternatively, it may involve imitating the tourist behavior, sometimes to the distress of the local older generation. In areas where the tourists are obviously more affluent than the local population, seen by their expenditure, the way they dress, and places they visit, some hatred towards these tourists may occur. This is particularly true where visitors may have access to facilities that are beyond the financial reach of local residents. In destinations where tourism has been developed to promote traditional culture, tourism has often had the effect of modifying or even destroying the moral and or cultural characteristics of a society. This may occur where young people from these cultures seeks to copy or obtain items the more affluent visitors possess. Some may no longer choose to dress in traditional clothing or not behaving in the community acceptable manner, nor observe the customs of their society or practice the skills passed through the generations of elders. The sale of traditional arts and crafts as reminder and the presentation of cultural displays such as dance and song for payment may be seen as trivializing the culture. These effects are detrimental to the culture and community. Therefore, it is most essential that the traditions and customs of local communities be respected. Tour operators must endeavor to maintain the integrity of these communities and ensure visitor behavior does not cause offense. It is hoped that the traditions of local communities continue for the purpose of not only earning income but also as they were intended for the celebration of the people's culture. However, it can also be argued that without this demand by tourists for cultural presentations, many traditional art forms may be lost, and in fact, tourism may be the reason why younger members of the community are now relearning these skills and traditions. Culture brokers. Culture brokers are those people whose daily work provides a protective barrier between the tourist and the local community. They explain the local host society or community to the tourist and try to assist the visitors to understand its custom and ways. People working as waiters, stewards, receptionists, guides, couriers, and as members of aircraft cabin crews usually fill a culture broker role. They are normally multilingual and able to understand most tourists' needs. Culture brokers are sometimes called marginal men or women because they are always at the edge or margin of the tourist and host encounter. Because of this process of satisfying their tourist customer needs, many of these so-called marginal men and women come to adopt the tourist worldview and lifestyles. As a result, they may also become separated from their own culture. Now we shall move on to different phases of impacts. First one is impacts on employment and jobs. The travel and tourism industry offers many work opportunities. These create social change through new wealth, new expectations, and new working habits. Significantly, these new work opportunities are often more suited to women and young people. Consequently, tourism work can give both these groups a greater degree of economic independence than they had previously. However, although these new jobs that tourism may bring, there may also be some negative impacts that the new tourist industry workers may experience. Their new work may only be available during periods of peak travel demand, that is, the few months of the tourist high season. In addition, long and inconvenient working hours may be required of them, including nights and weekend shifts, and wage and salary levels may be lower than in other comparable white-collar jobs. In short, many of these new jobs may be characterized by low pay, seasonal employment availability, and unsocial working hours. Impacts on local politics and languages. When a place becomes a new tourism destination, control of local activities is often in the hands of local leaders and power brokers. These are those people who are influential and or who tend to dominate locally. But expansion often leads to a loss of local control, especially when new leaders emerge based on tourism and newly established international contacts that tourism often requires. At the same time, some residents may be forced from their homes to enable new tourism ventures to proceed. In addition, some local or regional languages may no longer appear useful to tourism staff compared to mass international languages like English and French. Culture clashes. Because tourism involves movement of people to different geographical locations and establishment of social relations between people, cultural clashes can take place as a result of differences in cultures, ethnicity, religion, values, lifestyles, languages, and levels of prosperity. The result can be an overexploitation of the social carrying capacity and cultural carrying capacity of the local community. The attitude of local residents towards tourism development may unfold through the stages of euphoria, where tourists are very welcome through laziness, irritation, and potentially antagonism when anti-tourist attitudes begin growing among local people. Cultural clashes may further arise through economic inequality. Many tourists come from societies with different consumption patterns and lifestyles than what is current at destination, seeking pleasure, spending large amounts of money, and sometimes behaving in ways that even they would not accept at home. Next is impacts on morals and good behavior. The tourist presence may lead to noticeable changes in tourist receiving countries in generally accepted attitudes towards what is considered to be normally appropriate behavior and also in the prevailing ethical code. These changes in morals and the resulting problems for host communities can include changes in moral values and attitudes even among law-abiding citizens. Femininity tourism may become a common feature and it may be encouraged by tourist involvement to appear where it has not been common before, along with a seedy environment which is often associated with it. Sexually transmitted diseases such as HIV/AIDS and other serious forms of venereal disease may become prevalent. Syphilis and gonorrhea may reappear, either being spread by local people to tourists or received by them from visitors. Gambling may become prevalent. This may be objected to morally, but it is a large source of income for some tourist resorts. At the same time, criminal gangs may begin operating there, attracted by the apparently easy money which is routinely associated with gambling. Drugs may become a problem, with some tourists being tempted by local suppliers to try them and some local people becoming suppliers and or producers of these narcotics. Alcoholism may reach troublesome levels either among tourists or among the local inhabitants whose increased drinking is the result of traveler-induced demonstration effects. At the same time, local people may also be heavy drinkers, this time having a potentially negative demonstration effect on any visitors to their country. Crime, begging, and noisy and aggressive behavior may all seem to increase following the arrival of significant numbers of visitors. Local criminals may prey on tourists, some of whom may also engage in little crime. Indeed, all these impacts are frequently the subject of local control. Coming to Doxis Iridex. Doxy GV, based on his research on the Caribbean islands of Barbados and in the Niagara Falls area of Canada, has plotted the changing reactions over time of both residents and local business community alike to the presence of tourists. According to him, there are usually 5 stages in these changing attitudes. These vary in duration from destination to destination depending on how long they have been receiving visitors. He described these 5 stages in his IRIDEX or irritation index as follows. First one is euphoria. Visitors are welcome, there are opportunities for local people and new money flows in, but there is little planning. Second one is apathy. Visitors are taken for granted, they become targets for profit making and contacts become more formal. Third one is annoyance. Saturation is approached with too many people visiting the destination for it to remain enjoyable, especially in the peak season. This causes the local residents to begin to have doubts about tourism. Planners try to resolve this problem by increasing infrastructure rather than by limiting growth. Fourth one is antagonism. Open irritation appears, yet planning is remedial. Promotion is increased to offset the deteriorating reputation of the destination. Tourists are now being and are probably feeling cheated, yet are also being blamed for increased crime and taxes and for all sorts of everyday problems. Fifth one is acceptance. The place has changed permanently. Change is now accepted by residents. They have forgotten what the area was like before the first tourist arrived. The last section in this episode is socio-cultural benefits of travel and tourism. Despite all these problems, there are some benefits. These are social, the increased knowledge of the host culture by visitors and awareness of its history, festivals, music, arts, cooking styles, religion and language. This can lead to renewed culture pride among the host community, improved reputation and visibility of the host community to outsiders, and increased social contacts produced by the arrivals of outsiders, which can introduce new ideas and values into the host community. To the host culture, which survives because of the tourist interest in seeing traditional entertainments, arts, crafts and music performances, and the enriching role of visitors, which frequently leads to the provision of facilities, amenities and services which would not otherwise be available to the host community, may encourage the teaching of the local language to foreigners, often boosts heritage protection, especially of the ancient buildings, leading to increased appreciation of their architectural value and improvement in their interpretation and management, and can encourage cultural interchange and international understanding. Tourism and socio-cultural conservation. Tourism can contribute to positive developments, not just negative impacts. It has the potential to promote social development through employment creation, income redistribution, and poverty alleviation. Other potential positive impacts of tourism include tourism as a force for peace. Traveling brings people into contact with each other, and as tourism has an educational element, it can foster understanding between peoples and cultures and provide cultural exchange between hosts and guests. Because of this, the chances increase for people to develop mutual sympathy and understanding and to reduce their prejudice. Next is strengthening communities. Sustainable coastal tourism can add to the vitality of communities in many ways. The jobs created by tourism can act as a very important motivation to reduce immigration from rural areas. Local people can also increase their influence on tourism development as well as improve their job earning prospects through tourism related professional training, development of business and organizational skills. Next is development of facilities as a benefit to residents. Benefits can include upgraded infrastructure, health and transport improvements, new sport and recreational facilities, restaurants and public spaces, as well as an influx of better quality commodities and food. Next is revaluation of culture and traditions. Sustainable tourism has the potential to improve the preservation and transmission of cultural and historical traditions, often contributing to the conservation and sustainable management of natural resources, the protection of local heritage, are creating a regenerative of native culture, cultural arts and crafts. So students, we can conclude the session. The impact of tourism on local communities can be both positive and negative, whether it comes to economic, social or environmental effects.